All right. Thank you again so much for joining us. Can you please tell us who you are and what do you do?
Hey, my name's Kristen. I'm a game designer at 2K BCA, working on NBA 2K series and the WWE 2K series.
You're actually the first game designer I've had the opportunity to speak with. When I was recruiting at PlayStation, I didn't have many opportunities to interview game designers. We usually hired for a bunch of other roles. But could you would you mind explaining exactly what a game designer does? Because I know it could vary per studio and per like skill set and stuff. So I'm just wondering what your interpretation of what a game designer is.
Yeah, sure. So exactly like you said, game design is different in every studio you go to, and it's different even if you go there under a role. So for me, being a game designer is it's almost like you're an architect. You lay out all the rules, the groundwork, all the documentation. You're the first line of defense when it comes to game development. When it comes to planning out a game, you have to be a problem solver, someone who has all the answers for the other teams and communicating across multiple teams with artists, engineers to kind of just make sure the game's outlook and all the stuff you want to do for that game is up to scratch. That's my interpretation on being a game designer.
Okay, that's right. Now, is this something you? Because when I think of game designer too, I always think of someone who wants to be an indie dev and build their like just create their own game from scratch because they have a broad set of skills and they have to learn how they have to know how to code, do a little bit of art, level design. They have to be pretty much everything. Now, is it something like when you were going to school and stuff that you knew you wanted to do? Did you always know you wanted to be a game designer, like coming out of high school, or was it when you started your game design program?
It definitely was once I started my game design program, and I was pretty sure I wanted to be a game designer from the jump, just because I wanted to have more hands-on in the actual say so on things when it came to mechanics, different features, like you saying, like level design. Because yeah, as a designer, you kind of touch everything. You have to be able to understand all those different roles to kind of be a game designer.
And how was your, a lot of people now are taking different routes as far as going to, actually going to school and pursuing game design, getting their degree and stuff like that. But others are also, they're hopping on YouTube University and they're learning on their own because there's so much documentation out there. There's a lot of people posting their experiences as game devs. How was your experience at Depaul?
Yeah, I decided to go the bachelor route to get that. That was more of a definitely like a parent thing, you know, like telling your parents like, "Oh, I want to make video games," and they're like, "Video games." So kind of going and doing that degree to kind of, you know, get more accredited and have more value there, because you can do both. Honestly, my time at the program, it was pretty good from a development standpoint. I got to touch a lot of things. From a design standpoint, I learned different tools like GameMaker, Unity, Unreal. But at the same time, while I was there, I was YouTube heavy, learning stuff on the side. So I was kind of doing both. The best thing about the college aspect was the networking, getting to meet, other colleagues who were also working towards getting into the game industry. I think that's for any any college person who went to college. That's probably the best thing you could get out of it sometimes. But for the game industry, that's a big thing, networking. So that's the best thing I got out of it.
That's interesting because I usually ask that question too. Like when you told your parents, that you wanted to make video games, like what was their reaction, and were they all for it, or were they like, "No, you're not going to do that"? Did it take some convincing, or
Well,
were they not really tripping?
Well, my mom, she was cool with it. I'm not gonna lie, she was pretty cool with it because she knew I played video games all the time, So she was like, at least you're spend all the time you spend on video games, you're actually gonna try to make it into a career. My dad was definitely like, "Oh, you can't make any money doing that. What are you doing? Go play basketball or something." Or so, so with him, I was kind of like, I was like, let me just do my own thing. Like I didn't mention to him that much. So like at first when I would bring it up to them after I said I want to do games, I would just say, "Oh, I want to do computer science."
Nice.
So I would just say, "Yeah, I want to do computer science. I want to do computer science." And then once I got older, I didn't care anymore at that point. So then I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing game design."
Nice.
Doing game development.
That's funny. Yeah, I feel like parents are more understanding these days, and because they know how popular video games is now, it's much more mainstream than it was before, and I feel like they're a little bit more understanding when
Yeah.
it comes to their kids pursuing game dev. So
Yeah.
that's really cool to hear.
It's been
It-
like a complete 180 now because you brought that up. Now that it's like way more popular and like you see it all the time. People talking about games is in the media. Like I'll have my dad hit me up sometimes like, "Why don't you make your own game? Why do you
oh, for real?
It's like, "Why don't you make your own game?" It's like, "Why are you working? Why are you spending time working? You should be making your own game." And then he'll send me like all these articles from like different indie studios and stuff like that. It's so funny that the 180 that has gone from the game industry having like more exposure in such a short amount of time from when I was in college, like only 4, 5 years ago to now.
That is crazy. But I like that. That's really cool. Like that, the support is still there. And he's thinking
Yeah.
about you, thinking about games. That's really cool. I like that a lot. So at DePaul, and where's DePaul? Is DePaul Chicago?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Chicago, North and downtown.
Okay. And were you there in person, or were you doing a online program?
I was there in person. The pandemic
Oh, that's right.
made it remote
That's right.
for my like the end of my junior year going into senior year.
Just on the game design program itself, like, was it a pretty diverse class? Like, was it big or small? Did they have a lot of people of color in the class? I'm always curious about that.
It was, I would say the classes weren't pretty big. I would say about 10, 9 to 10 people. Um, were they diverse? Not really. Probably way more, white people and Asian people. And then here and there you'll have like one or two uh S- South Asian people, or then you'll have like one or two black people. I didn't meet many other black people in at my program.
Wow, that's a trip.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious about that. Something that I learned when I was at recruiting at PlayStation was QA is probably one of the best ways to learn about the entire game dev pipeline. It's not the best in pay, from what I understand,
Yeah.
but it is, and also the work is super repetitive and stuff. But it looks like you kind of started in QA, but you were also doing the DePaul Originals game studio. Would you say that you learned a lot in QA and it helped you as far as like what you're doing right now?
Yeah. So the QA was pretty interesting with it kind of taught me. It didn't teach I won't lie, it didn't teach me a lot dev side. But it taught me more about the structure of teams and the hierarchy and kind of how to fit into a team and how to kind of communicate with like other people you work with and someone who's above you. And then that did help me going into that into Dog Studio.
Oh, you call it Dog Studio? I was like, what's
Yeah.
that? The Dog Studio.
Yeah.
And can you explain what it is too? Because I did look at the website, and it's is it mostly student based, or is it for anyone outside or who just went to DePaul could be a part of the game studio?
Yeah, so it started off with two of our professors. They wanted to start making a game in Unreal. So what they would do, we would have classes, and any of the students in the class they thought were pretty good, they would invite them over to see if they would want to join the studio. So yeah, it became just a student effort, kind of like, if you want to do this on the side, you come by to the office and we'll have machines open for you guys to contribute. And then it started to turn into a bigger thing. When I left, it was still just a student-led project. I'm pretty sure they got a lot of funding now, so it might actually be kind of a crossover of like, if you were at the studio and you graduated, you can probably come back on and continue working there. But I'm not completely 100% sure where they're at now.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool that they have something like that. I haven't seen anything like that as far as a game studio at a university. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, that it helped. Honestly, it helped me a lot. Probably helped me more than any of the classes I took, just to, kind of nail down on exactly what I want to do as a game designer and actually working with other people and getting an engine. Because you do all your classes and it's a lot of like theory work and you should do this, you should do that. But, everything changes once you're actually working in development and you have deadlines to hit and you're working with different personalities and you have bugs and all type of things coming up. So, yeah, I always get asked about it when when I have interviews or if I'm talking to somebody about it.
That is always a trip. I mean, how the educational system is kind of like that. It's not as hands-on as everyone thinks it's going to be, but I guess it depends on the program too. I've heard other programs that are much more hands-on, but I think most of them are just theory based.
Yeah.
Now, I was looking at your website too, and something that I haven't seen before was, and it's really impressive too, is you have these PDF documents that are their analysis of different parts of the game. It's like so for Ghost of Tsushima, for example, it's a breakdown on how I think combat system and Ghost of Tsushima works with a design document of the features. So that's something that I haven't seen before, and it's very detailed. Now, is this something that you learned at Depaul to do, or is it something you came up with on your own?
It's a mixture. Learn from Depaul kind of what it means to make a design doc and not like analyzing some, a feature or mechanic. A lot of the different topics I touch on there is just from me like researching, looking at other people's design docs that I found, talking to other designers that I know, and kind of taking all that and trying to make my own type of analysis on that feature.
Is this something that you thought would be, interesting for you to do and to analyze, or is it like something that, was like, oh, I need to do this if I want to get a job?
It was definitely, I need to do this because I want to get a job. Not that I didn't play Ghost of Tsushima. Most of those I do it on games that I've played and finished and put a lot of time in. Something I would do like for fun, but at the time when I did it, it was definitely end of the year, starting to create my portfolio, thinking of different ways to show my, different aspect of my design chops and what I can and can't do.
Okay, and this is something that other aspiring game designers do as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, because portfolio is such a big thing especially for designers, because people talk about portfolios and you think very heavy about art portfolio, showing off artwork, 3D models, etc. But designers should have a pretty strong portfolio as well, and whatever aspect of game design they want to go into to kind of show what they can and can't do.
Something that I'm curious about, do you think that if you hadn't created these documents on your site, would you have been able to land the job at 2K?
Yeah, I definitely think that if I didn't have it, I probably would have landed it, or wouldn't have got the interview. Because I do remember when I had my first interview with the director, he commented on my portfolio page and was like, oh, it's really well done with everything that was on there. So definitely, especially if you don't have a reference into the company.
Yeah, tell me about it. I understand how that goes.
Yeah. So if you don't have a reference, that portfolio has to like hit something for them to want to talk to you.
Is it common at Visual Concepts for them to do they usually hire juniors?
Yeah, it's pretty common. Obviously, with all the stuff that's happening, it's kind of slowed down a bit, but it was pretty common to hire some associates, juniors. When I first started, I would say our design team had at least 5 associates, juniors on the team. I think 2 years now, we started a program called VCU where we would bring on college students and actually bring them on as associates, but then they would go through like a 3-month boot camp to get onboarded onto our systems and then go on to the actual, games that we were working on.
That's very cool. Is that an internal project, or that's something that's not announced publicly?
It was internal. It was internal, but I believe it was mentioned in the job application, the job posting.
I see. That's very cool. Very cool. I like that a lot. And going into visual concepts, like, what was that experience like for you? Anything you want to mention, the interview or onboarding, the team, just anything would be helpful.
The interview, it was obviously coming out of college, doing some interviews to get into gaming. It was nervous. I was very nervous. But the team, they were very welcoming. The interviews they weren't stressful. That was a big thing for me. When I did their interview, everybody was very cool. They answered any questions I had, and they calmed me down. Once I got onto the team, it was pretty straightforward. People were open to answering my questions. I never felt like I was just thrown out there to just figure out everything by myself. I always had someone I can talk to, and everybody was pretty open to talking to you. I could talk to my director, I could talk to my lead, I can talk to multiple people on my team. I could reach out to someone else on another team, whether it be engineering or art. So that's really good, especially as an associate when you're trying not to mess anything up. And it definitely helped me not to have kind of imposter syndrome when I first got on, because that was something I was kind of worried about when I first joined, but they helped me get through that and was there for me, and was pretty confident in my skills. They let me work in engine really fast as well, which kind of helped as well. They put a lot of trust in me to do the work and get the work done, which I appreciated.
You guys are using a proprietary engine, right?
Yeah, we are.
Do you think that knowing Unreal and how to implement was helpful? Like, did it translate into whatever proprietary engine you guys are using?
No.
Wow,
No,
really?
it didn't.
Wow.
It has to do, I don't know how much I can say, but 2K has been around for a long time, from early 2000s. So their system is kind of built on older processes than what Unreal is now. So you definitely have to kind of take a step back from what I definitely had to take a step back from what I learned in Unreal and kind of relearn some new things to get onboarded onto their tools.
Yeah, because Unreal is like, everyone's like, you got to learn Unreal. You got to learn Unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought in college too. It was like, you have to learn Unity, you have to learn Unreal. And then when I got onboarded, I was like, oh, so I don't have to know any of these right now. But I think that's just the case with an older game studio, like if you're gonna go on to an indie studio, then you definitely should know those things pretty well. If you're gonna go on to a studio that's starting a new IP, they definitely will probably be using Unreal or Unity. If you're going to a studio that's has more skin in the game, then you should definitely know that they're probably using a proprietary tool. It could have some aspects of Unreal, they might have the flow charts, those different things, in-game editor, etc. But if you're going to like a COD or 2K or a EA, you should definitely expect to see some stuff that you haven't seen in your program.
Yeah, that's great advice. Definitely something that a lot of aspiring designers should know. What tools are you using, kind of on your day-to-day that are like tools and stuff that we would know, or is everything like totally proprietary that you use on a day-to-day?
No, day-to-day I'm using Excel, Word docs. I also use Jira. I think a lot of places use Jira. What else? We use the Google Drive stuff as well. So Sheets, Docs. That's pretty much it. That is not game dev related. A lot of the tools that we don't use are that is free to everyone are basically not development tools.
I see. What's the learning curve for Jira too? Because I know that's a popular one. I think in my mind it reminds me of, it's like a Trello for the team.
Yeah.
Is it, did you know how to use Jira before you started at VC?
No, I didn't. At Dog Studio, I think we used Taiga and Trello. Yeah, it was my first time using Jira when I got onboarded onto their team, and it's pretty straightforward, to be honest. When you come on, you should Jira it is a production tool. So as a designer, just know that you'll have a producer who's really managing those stuff, and your job is just to make sure that your tasks are good. So it's going to be pretty close to Trello and Taiga when it comes to that.
Usually, you mentioned that you get, some really good support from your teammates. You could go to a lot of different people if you're struggling and stuff like that. Now, when you come across a problem that, you can't really hit up any of your teammates for, like, how do you actually go about like solving that problem? Like, what are kind of the things that you do? Do you do a little bit of research to figure it out, or, what's your process for that?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to those things, thankfully that 2K has so much skin in the game. I can do a lot of research and kind of backtracking on, an issue I may have, because 9 times out of 10, if it's a feature that we've done or a feature that's been in the game for a minute and we're kind of just, updating it, this bug has came up. So, sometimes I'll go on YouTube and look up the bug, maybe watch some 2K vids and see if I see that bug happening. If I don't, then that's when I'll kind of go back and look through Perforce, kind of see any change list to that feature I'm working on, see if anything's happening. And then if that doesn't work, then I just go through and just try a bunch of different things until I can kind of figure out what's wrong, if I can't reach out to anybody. But most times out of not, when I go back and kind of track down someone else's work, it answers my question. And you kind of learn that after a while, to kind of just track down other people's work to kind of see what they've done, or like, you might have a bug that might be kind of different than someone else's bug, but it's still in the same tool. So you could kind of contrast and compare on, okay, they had this issue, I'm having this, it's similar, what did they do to fix it, and go from there.
Yeah, I always imagine, like, especially when you're just starting at the AAA studio, it's like, you don't want to mess things up. You want to get everything right. You want to, figure out these problems, but you don't want to be blowing everyone up all the time, because
Yeah.
I know that they want to see that you could do things independently without having to rely on your teams all the time. So I imagine that's something that a lot of aspiring artists and designers, they worry about a lot. Like, how do they come in and solve these problems?
Yeah.
And a big deal.
Yeah, and that's the thing for every position, whether you're a a junior, a mid-level, a senior, you're always going to run into those, and you're a lot of times you're not going to have the answer. So that's going to be something you're going to have to do consistently through your career, doing that. And when you're doing interviews, it's going to be something that they're going to ask you about. How would you handle this? What are you going to do if this happens? So just, get into that flow of doing it by yourself will save you a lot of time, get you more praise, and make you a better candidate when it comes to interviewing.
Did they ask you that question in the interview? Do you remember?
Yes, they did.
Do you remember what it was relating to, like a specific problem from your portfolio?
I can't remember. I can't remember what exactly it was. I think it was similar to, like, it's very similar to what your question you asked, kind of like, you have a problem, you can't reach out to somebody.
Oh, just more general.
Yeah, it was more general.
Okay. No, that's good. And then when you said you're looking for other people's work, You mean like the documentation that the studio has, right?
Yeah, documentation and also looking through any change lists on Perforce. Perforce is what we use, which that is another tool we actually use that I should have mentioned. I forget about it because we use it all the time. Perforce is where we use to submit our changes or adding features onto the game. When you go into Perforce, you can look up a user's name and find the changes they've got put into the game, and you can find the exact file that they made those changes in. So, like if, for example, with the documentation, if you're stuck at something and you look at the documentation and it doesn't fully answer the question that was wrong, and either the person you want to reach out is busy, you don't want to bug them, or even if they're not on the team anymore, you can still go into Perforce and look up their change lists from whenever they submitted it and look at what they did.
Do you think that's a tool that someone should know before they go to any studio? Is that something that you could learn like on the side?
Definitely, you definitely should know some type of tool like Perforce. Or you have Perforce and GitHub. Those are the two major ones. You definitely should know both. I think from a AAA standpoint, Perforce is the mainstay. Perforce and Helix. So that's definitely something you want to know. I learned it when I was at Dog Studio, and it made my onboarding onto the team quicker once I got on.
That's really good. What's Helix again? Is it similar to Perforce?
Yeah, Helix is similar to Perforce. It's kind of like it's Perforce version of Jira, basically. So, but it focuses more on bugs. So
Oh,
all
I
the
see.
bugs you have will like go into Helix, and then you assign them to somebody, and then if they log into their Helix, those bugs will come up.
Got you. Okay.
Helix is an old tool though, so honestly, I would just focus on Jira.
Okay. And remind me too, because I see GitHub a lot too. I probably should know this, but just pretend like I don't. Gotcha. I kind of don't. GitHub is like, can you explain what GitHub is?
So GitHub is, think of it as like a storage, right? So you're working on your game, you're working on your game on Unreal, and you save it on your computer. You always want to have a backup. You want to put the file somewhere where if something breaks in the local build of your game, you have something basically in the cloud that you can pull down and like revert your changes to see, okay, go back to where it wasn't broken. That's basically what GitHub and Perforce are. With GitHub, it's more public, so I can upload my game or my exe files to GitHub, and someone can download it and then play my game. But at the same time, I can use GitHub as a tool to kind of work with a smaller team of people to just kind of do that version control of your game.
Very cool. That's a great explanation because I legit, I legit didn't know exactly how it functioned because I never, when I was a sourcing recruiter at PlayStation, I was mostly on the, trying to find art people. So I was looking at
Yeah,
portfolios and stuff. So it's good to know what GitHub actually, how it functions and stuff.
yeah,
So I'm pretty sure you get this question a lot now because this is definitely one of the toughest times in the games industry, especially for a lot of aspiring game devs who are just coming out, finishing their 4-year degrees, and it's kind of wondering like why they just can't get anything. It's just and it's not even just juniors. It's a lot of seniors and principal people. They're having a tough time finding gigs too. But for the aspiring game designers out there, just kind of wondering, what advice you have for them so that they could put themselves in a good position to get hired in these tough times. Like, what do you think? What advice would you give for them?
definitely. Like I said before, working on that portfolio, making sure you have a strong portfolio, kind of honing down on one specific type of game design you're doing right now, especially with how, everything is. It's good to be a jack of all trades, but right now, I think being more specialized and focusing on one aspect of game design will get you further than just being a designer. focusing? Are you like what type of design do you want to do? Level design, compact design, doing that, and just making sure your portfolio shows all those aspects of that particular version of design. Also, this is something I was told, and I'm sure other aspiring designers have been told in their programs. Just make games, make games, make small games, make games with your friends, make games with some of your colleagues, do game jams, make games and add those to your portfolio. Take the role on those teams as the role you want to get in the industry, and just showcase it. Talk about what you did. Talk about your process. Be in detail with those things. And the third thing is networking, and I think the networking one will get your foot in the door more times than not. Connecting with other people who are in the industry, getting feedback from those people, creating relationships with those people, just in case a job opens at their studio, you can already have that connection with them to say, hey, I saw you guys have this role. I would be super interested if I could get a referral to this role. And a lot of times out of that will at least get you that initial interview to kind of plead your case to go on. You usually get your initial interview with a recruiter, and then at least you'll get to talk with one more person most times out of not. So it gives you a fighting chance to at least talk to someone, especially where we're at right now. You see a lot of people saying they can't even get an interview. They can't even get a denial email from some companies. So yeah, the networking one is I would probably put that 1, portfolio 2, and making games 3.
That's great. Yep, I totally agree with the networking thing. A lot of people are, including me, like I was super, nervous and shy to kind of reach out to people and ask for advice. Now I think LinkedIn has become more of a common place where, people hop on almost like when they hop on Instagram or Twitter, they're hopping on LinkedIn to see what's out there to, conversate with other folks. I feel like it's a more common thing now. So yeah, networking is definitely important, and there's a skill set to it too. I don't know how you handled your networking, because I know when you were coming up, LinkedIn probably wasn't like a place where people were saying like you definitely have to go on there and reach out to people. Like how did you handle your networking?
Yeah, definitely. In college, LinkedIn was not really a thing. A lot of people didn't have LinkedIn's, so it was definitely a college thing. Just when I worked on teams with people, because in my program there was a lot of team projects. Just making sure I did my all to create those connections, be a good teammate, and be a better person, and do be conscious of other people's work and what they want to do, and just doing that and just showing them a hard worker. And I mean, that paid off for a lot of instances for me. That's how I did my networking in college. Even for my job here at 2K, I got referred for this position from someone I had met at Depaul, and they had graduated and they had gone to work here. And I reached out to them about when I saw they had the associate designer role, and that helped me get my foot in the door. And that was just from networking. We had class together. We had a couple of friends from those classes, and just knowing that person.
That's great. That's great advice too. Yeah, just to really work hard, be kind to people, be a good teammate. Yeah, that's great. I like that.
No one likes working with someone who's an asshole.
Oh, for real. That's facts. Is there anything along your journey where you something you kind of wish you knew when you were coming up, when you started this?
The biggest thing I wish I knew was probably how hard a work-life balance is when you're a game dev. Especially if you're passionate about being a game dev, which I'm pretty sure most people who do games are passionate about it. You gotta get lost in your work sometime, and you kind of push yourself on things that you shouldn't push yourself. You work longer than you should, And when starting out, I wish I, had a better work-life balance and taking time to get better as a game designer. When I was in college, I was definitely heads down only on game design, but I wish I still networked, but I still wish I had a better school work life balance. And I brought that initially into my job here with just heads down, just working, getting my work done. I've kind of started now to have a better work life balance and, being able to communicate with friends and family better. But initially, I definitely wish I was better at that. It would have saved me a lot less pain.
Do you find yourself, do you have like some kind of routine where like you do like maybe 2 hour sprints, or just so that when it's time to take a break? Do you do stuff like that now, or can you?
Yeah, I definitely do stuff like that now. Where after we have a sprint, we plan out our sprints that we're having. I look at the work I have, and I try to save more of the heavy lifting near the end, so that I can knock out the smaller stuff in the beginning, kind of take my time with those, and kind of pace myself better instead of trying to like go heads down and hit the hardest problem first and knock it out. And then, by now that I spent so much time on the hardest thing, because when you go for the hardest challenge, there's definitely going to be other things that come up that might take you longer. I just gotten better at pacing myself when it comes to my sprints and distributing the work out better.
Nice, nice. I like that. Kristen, is there anything else that you want to, mention to all the aspiring game designers out there, other than what you mentioned?
With all the stuff that's happening now, don't be discouraged. Continue working hard. Continue, like I said, working on that portfolio, being a good person, applying to those jobs, keep working on being a better game designer. Don't be afraid to take risks, bet on yourself. This was a dream for me to work as a game designer. I never thought it would happen. Even when I graduated during the pandemic, and I didn't think I was going to get in, but I kept on working hard and, not giving up on myself. So that's something I would, tell people, can, work hard and don't give up.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kristen. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
You have a good one.
You too.